Last chapter, here we go. Now, if you're looking at your book and saying, well, Mr. Ball, there's a whole bunch more. Well, not actually. That next part is the first chapter of the next book, trying to get you like a cliffhanger to see if you can buy the next book. All's well that ends well. Looking back on that night, I remember thinking that this whole mess could never be resolved happily. What would become of Bunnicula, my new friend, who was suffering from starvation? And what about Chester, my old friend, who seemed to have flipped his lid and, if you'll pardon my expression, was in the doghouse with the Monroes? Those are a bunch of idioms in there. As far greater concern of that time, of course, was my own future, for on the night all that consumed my thoughts was the fear of the next day's injection. It all seemed hopeless indeed. But looking back on the next day, I can tell you that happy endings are possible, even in situations as fraught and complexion as this one was. Early the next morning, we all piled into the car, some of us with greater reluctance than others, and trolled off to the vet. And by afternoon, we were on our way to solving our problems. The vet worked everything out very nicely. He discovered that Bunnicula was suffering from extreme hunger. I could have told him that. Rather than jar his fragile stomach with solid foods, the doctor decided that he should be put on a liquid diet until he gets better. So Bunnicula was immediately given some carrot juice, which he drank eagerly. After he finished, he looked over at me with a great grin on his face and winked, if you can imagine a rabbit winking at you. Chester was diagnosed as being emotionally overwrought. It was suggested that he started sessions with a cat psychiatrist to work out what the doctor called a case of sibling rivalry with Bunnicula. I asked Chester later what sibling was, but he wasn't speaking to me, so I looked it up. It's like a brother or a sister, and sibling rivalry means that you are competing with your brother or your sister for attention. I wasn't sure this was Chester's problem, but it sure explained a lot about Toby and Pete. As for me, well, I came out the best. Dr. Wesenman was all set to give me my shots when the nurse came in with my card. Wait, doctor, this dog doesn't need his shots yet. It's too soon. So I got a pat on the head and a doggy pop instead. These days, everything is back to normal in the Monroe household. Almost. Bunnicula liked his liquid diet so much that the Monroes have kept him on it, and oddly enough, there have been no problems with vegetables mysteriously turning white, since Chester, of course, insists that this proves his theory. Obviously, Harold, the liquefied vegetables take the place of vegetable juice, so Bunnicula has no need to go roaming anymore. Then he's not a vampire, I said. Nonsense, he's a vampire, all right, but he's a modern vampire. He gets his juice from a blender. Case closed, Sherlock. I inquired. Case closed. Oh, Chester. Yes, Harold. What are the two funny marks on your neck? Chester jumped. I laughed. Very funny, he said, as he began to bathe his tail. Very funny. The Monroes never knew anything of Chester's theory. They changed markets, and to this day they believe that they were victims of curious vegetable blight. Bunnicula and I have become good friends. He still doesn't say anything, but he snuggles up next to me by the fireplace, and we take long, cozy snoozes together. One night, I sang him a lullaby in the obscure dialect of his homeland, and he slept very peacefully. It was a night that cemented our friendship. Now about Chester. I said that everything was back to normal, almost. Naturally, Chester is the almost. He had been seeing his psychologist, Dr. Veruptix, twice a week. For some time now, he takes his therapy very seriously. The other morning, I was trying to get a little sleep when Chester came over and nudged me in the ribs. Harold, do you realize you've never really communicated? I mean, really communicated? I opened my eyes cautiously. And in order to communicate, Harold, you have to really be in touch with yourself. Are you in touch with yourself, Harold? Can you look yourself in the mirror and say, I know who I am? I am in touch with the menace that is me, and I can reach out to the you-ness that is you. I close my eyes. I'm used to it by now. He talks like that all the time. He no longer reads Edgar Allan Poe at night. And once he concluded that he had been right about Bunnicula, there has been no more talk about vampires. The mark of the vampire sits its usefulness obsolete on its shelf. Right now, he's reading Finding Yourself by Screaming a Lot. And the other night, when I heard the most awful noises coming from the basement, I didn't even bat an eye. I know he was just Chester finding himself, as he calls it. He explains to me that he's gotten in touch with his kittenhood, And I've told him that's fine, just to let me know when he's going to do it so I can be elsewhere. I've had enough trouble from Chester's adventures. So, that is my story. Now, you got to remember, they're going to end this just like they started it, and they started it by the dog taking this story to a publisher to see if they would write a story. So that is my story. The story of a mysterious stranger who no longer seems quite so mysterious and who is definitely no longer a stranger. I have presented the facts as clearly as I could, and I leave it to you, dear reader, to draw your own conclusions. I must now bring this narrative to a close. Since it's Friday night, Toby's night to stay up late and read, and I can hear the crinkling of cellophane, that's the wrapper around those cupcakes he likes, I can only hope it covers 2 chocolate cupcakes filled with cream. Da-da-da! And I usually clap at the end of a good book. We finished another one. Now, if you want to read the Holiday Inn, not Holiday Inn like the hotel, but the Holiday Inn, you can read about that. It's about them going to a cat and dog hotel so their family can go on vacation. It's just a few pages to get you a taste of it, and then they want you to buy it. If you look on the back, there's a whole bunch of more of these books if you want to look them up at your local public library. Please put this in your packet now so that you don't forget to send it back.